All right, welcome back. Day 7 already. And we're in Psalm again, Psalm 114. When Israel came out of Egypt, Jacob from a people of foreign tongue, Judah became God's sanctuary, Israel his dominion. The sea looked and fled. The Jordan turned back. The mountains leaped like rams and the hills like lambs. Why was it, sea, that you fled? Why, Jordan, did you turn back? Why, mountains, did you leap like rams? You hills like lambs. Tremble, earth, at the presence of the Lord, at the presence of the God of Jacob, who turned the rock into a pool and the hard rock into springs of water. All right. When we think of scriptural verses that relate to Lent, we may not think about verses in the Old Testament book of Psalms. Psalm 114 is one of the many psalms that reference the exodus of Israel out of Egypt and the power and the promises of God. That made it all possible. It speaks about how they were brought out of slavery, how they kept their own language in Egypt, even for 400 years in captivity, how God set up his tabernacle and kingdom among them, how God's power divided the Red Sea at the beginning of their journey and the Jordan River at the end, how the mountains and the hills shook at the giving of the law when God came down on Mount Sinai, and how God gave them water out of the rock. Hosea 11:1 tells us that out of Egypt I called my son. That son was, of course, Jesus Christ, whose death and resurrection fulfilled all that the Exodus foreshadowed. The Exodus reminds us that God is a promise keeper. He delivered all that he promised to the Israelites as they journeyed through the wilderness, despite their grumbling, disobedience, and idolatry. Likewise, he remains faithful to us today, despite our grumbling, disobedience, and idolatry. The Israelites were slaves in Egypt. We are slaves to sin. God delivered the Israelites to the promised land of Canaan. He will deliver us to the promised land of heaven. If, if we only accept his gift of salvation made possible through the suffering and sacrifice of his son, Jesus Christ. This is what we commemorate each year during the season of Lent. And that was from Mary O'Neill. Thanks, Mary. So, this is a fascinating psalm because it states things that took place, which is interesting. The sea looked and fled. The Jordan turned back, and it was mentioned very well, beginning and end of the journey. The mountains leaped like rams, and the hills like lambs. And then it asks the question, why? 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 Why all these things took place? And that fascinates me because, if you remember, when Passover was given, it was said that you are to take and teach these things to your children. And when your children ask you, why do we celebrate these things? You are to tell them what God did, what was the condition before you encountered God and his deliverance, and what was your condition and state after God intervened in your life. And that's no different than what we do in the season of Lent. We recall and we relive what God, or I should say, what our condition was before encountering Jesus Christ. And then we celebrate what he did for us. And then we go forth to live a life in light of the change that's been brought about, the change that we hope will take steady root and grow and will become more Christ-like in everything that we do. Unlike what the people did wandering in the desert for 40 years or when they were in the land, we hope to do a little better. Honestly, we don't always, but we're striving to. And Lent reminds us. And so when your children ask, why do you celebrate Lent? It's because of Jesus. And why do we celebrate Palm Sunday? It's because of God's love. And why do we celebrate Easter? It's because of the great love of God for all of his creation.